The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Greetings, everyone. You have come to the right place for the BCSCA's webinar this month on the electric car and how will we pass the tipping point, or how soon and when will we pass the tipping point, with John Stonia from the Vancouver Electric Vehicles Association and various other things I'll tell you about later. My name's Guy Dauncey. I'm joined at the switches by our trusty steed, Bruce Mackenzie, who knows how to do all the technical stuff. Our mission in the BCSCA is to empower British Columbians to build a clean, renewable energy future. And we work to achieve this by bringing constructive, positive solutions to the table that will address the global climate crisis and help us realize our vision of a British Columbia that has made a successful transition to a clean energy future and can flourish without any need for fossil fuels. We have a wide variety of people. Over 180 people have registered, with participants from all across British Columbia and some as far away as Stockholm, New Delhi, Islamabad, and Paris. So to give you a sense of who's here, I'll just call out a few names. Among those who are participating, we have Peter Ostergaard from the Fraser Basin Council in Victoria and Vancouver. We have David Grove from the Royal Bay Bakery in Victoria, who actually has a solar system charging his electric car in Colwood. Also from Climate Smart in Vancouver, we have Michelle Bonner. In Winnipeg, from the Via Fara Transportation Policy and Planning Consulting, we have Jairo Vaifara. From Aurora, Ontario, Fraser Demoff from the Windfall Ecology Centre. From Invermere, British Columbia, we have Bill Swan from Greenman Sustainable Solutions. Here in Victoria, Steve King from the Cascadia Green Building Council. From Kelowna, we have Alan Blaines with the Okanagan Carshare Cooperative. From Surrey, we have the Chief Electrical Inspector, Nick Lafort. From the City of Richmond, we have Levi Higgs. From the City of Victoria, we have Lawrence Eddy, and many other people from right across the country. So, as some of you are new to the BCSCA, I'm going to do a quick slideshow before we get started to introduce you to what our work is in general. Bruce, do I have controls? Yes, there we go. Our webinar is sponsored very kindly by Vancity, who do amazing things for our community, so we want to thank them. Okay, what's happening here, Bruce? There we go. That's our board of directors at our last AGM in Vancouver. Just having a slight problem. There we go. We look at the world in BCSCA and we see huge problems being caused by our unsustainable use of energy. Whether it's the end of cheap oil, climate change, air pollution, traffic pollution, the oil sands, you name it, all sorts of problems. Bruce, I think you have to control this. I'm not getting control on the slide forward. Okay. We see that we believe there is a climate emergency globally, and we see the need for 100% renewable energy as the solution, as one of the solutions to climate change. Our vision is a sustainable future in which all of BC's energy is green and renewable. And we do a bunch of things in the BCSCA, including advocacy for a sustainable BC. Our policy committee promotes the best policies and programs and works to end the worst ones. We do budget submissions. We participate in BC Utility Commission's hearings. We intervene on electricity pricing. We do our best to get the minister's attention and people in high levels. It's not always easy, but we work at it. And as well as that, as well as our yoga, we have a bunch of practical stuff that we get on with. So our Solar BC project is building BC's solar thermal community and supporting 32 solar communities across the province. Our Solar Schools project has curriculum development for solar voltaics in schools. Our Green Condos project is working with the City of Vancouver to help condominium owners make their condos more energy efficient. Our chapters around the province are organizing events and activities. So this is here in the Okanagan chapter, they organized and installed a solar hot water system on this Habitat for Humanity house. In Victoria, the chapter organized an electric vehicles and electric bicycles showcase last summer. In Kelowna, in Kamloops, the chapter organized a solar laundry project to draw on that wonderful source of energy up in the sky. And our climate and energy Solutions webinars like this reach hundreds of people each month with what we always hope are world-class presentations. They're on our website, past webinars. You can find them all logged up and ready for you to watch. And this one will be in as well. Our our Climate Change Showdown has reached 54,000 grade 5 and 6 students across BC, teaching them about climate change and challenging them in a contest to reduce their impact, both themselves and their families. So how do we change the world? We do it by working for a host of practical changes, starting with more energy conservation. That means you don't leave the room with the lights on. Also, more wind energy. And we can roll through these quite quickly, Bruce. Spot the picture. More solar energy. More ocean power. And as well as ocean power, we have more geothermal power. There's no image in BC yet for that because we don't have any geothermal happening in BC yet. More solar hot water with the Mayor of Vancouver, Mayor of North Vancouver. More green buildings from Duncan. More district heat from the Falls Creek Energy Centre in Vancouver. More, what's happening here? Now we've got a bus in the middle of a district heat system. we have an electric bus. There we go. More electric buses, thanks to courtesy BC Transit. More cycling and electric bicycles, thanks to Victoria's Galloping Goose Trail. And we have more cargo bikes. We did a great webinar on this just 2 weeks ago. The details are on our website. That's Shift Co-op in Vancouver. More electric vehicles from the Empress Hotel. I think they charge a bit of a fee for that one. Customers only. And a top hat. More sustainable food and farming, including front gardens. And we have, there we go, a smart grid and smart green economics, because the Earth is not a negative externality. Keep calm and go green, as the saying is. And finally, we believe that together we can change the world, and if you're feeling inspired, we'd love it if you join the BCSCA and become a member at bcsca.org/join to support all this work that we're doing. So during the presentation, if you want to ask a question, you can write it in the box on the right-hand side of your screen, and Bruce will sort through the questions, and that's when you hope to get lucky. When the webinar is over, we'll post the whole thing to our website at bcsca.org. So now I'm going to introduce John Stonier. John is an entrepreneur and business consultant who's provided financial leadership to a wide spectrum of high-tech Canadian companies over the last 25 years, including notable companies in telecoms, internet, and renewable energy. Following his passion for a sustainable economy, he has acted in a range of advisory and leadership roles with the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association, the BC Sustainable Energy Association, the Vancouver Renewable Energy Co-op, and Solar BC. Through his consulting company, Signature Renewables, he provides consulting, CFO, business strategy, and corporate governance services to emerging businesses that are breaking new ground in progressive areas, ranging from web-based internet services to quick-service restaurants. His specific area of interest is sustainable industries such as electric vehicles and renewable energy. About 8 years ago, a newly purchased gas-electric hybrid piqued his curiosity in full electric cars, and it's been his passion ever since. He's the spokesman and former director of the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association and has given scores of presentations and media interviews. He's caretaker of Viva's, he might be showing us this, the 1912 Detroit electric car, the BC original, and he's been active in shaping local public policy on EV charging infrastructure. In 2012, he completed a 5-year project to convert his 1999 Porsche Boxster to 100% electric drive with regenerative braking. And I can't go vroom vroom because electric cars don't go vroom vroom. But for the silent equivalent, I offer you John Stonier.
Well, thank you very much, Guy. And it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon and evening, wherever you are in North America or in Europe. So if everything's flowing here right, I will start right away. First of all, I thought I'd give you a bit of a background on how I became, my personal history with electric vehicles. As Guy mentioned, it started in 2005 when my spouse bought a new Prius hybrid. And I really loved the electric side of it and was driving it more than she really wanted me to. And that spiked my interest in electric vehicles. I quickly joined the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association, became fairly involved in that organization, and things started taking off from there. At the time, back in 2007, there was no automakers that had any plans to build any electric cars, and some notable personalities were starting to fund first off electric conversions in California. And so Tom Hanks bought the first AC propulsion vehicle. George Clooney bought the first Tango car, which was a single inline drive car. It really went fast, just a bullet, really, but of early commercial full-speed electric cars. In 2009, I actually got a chance to drive George Clooney's car, and I can attest that it really did rip down the road with great acceleration. During this time, though, I was thinking, well, how will I get an electric car? So I took about a year and a half to figure out if I was going to get an electric car back in 2007, I had to build it myself. So I wanted to build a car that made sense to my peers, who are other chartered accountants and professionals. And so I wanted to pick a car that made some sense. And I went through all the, looking at weights and coefficient of drags and efficiency and space to put actually put new electrical components and remove the gasoline. And I picked a Porsche Boxster. In 2010, moving forward a few years, the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association had a great opportunity to test drive Chevy Volts here when they brought 2 prototypes to Vancouver. And it was a real pleasure to talk to the engineers at the time who were there with the car, and we were able to find out just how well they actually engineered it, and it was really quite impressive. Also in 2010, it was a couple years delay in my project, but I started to buy the main components, the batteries, the motors, and I started to configure them, getting them ready for the car. 2011, through Viva, we were continuing to show our 1912 Detroit Electric and to contrast that to some of the new prototypes. In 2011, there were only the Japanese prototypes that were in town. This is the Mitsubishi i-MiEV that BC Hydro and the City of Vancouver had, and we showed them off at various shows. Also in 2011, I really got to the meat of putting my car together. In fact, I ended up spending 4 months in a machine shop doing the final assembly, also, of course, with other very talented people who were operating CNC machines and SolidWorks and lots of other technical experience that I don't have. But I basically project managed the whole project of the conversion. And finally, after 5 years, in April 2010, I was able to start my new car and drive it around. And since that time, I've driven it virtually every day. It's got about 6,000 miles on it. It actually was a U.S. car, so I'm still having to convert back from MPH to KMH. But it's got over 6,000 miles. I figure I've saved, maybe $2,000 worth in fuel. I basically pay $30 a month in electricity, where I would normally have paid $300 a month, I think, at least for premium fuel. I don't really pay attention to gas prices as much anymore, and saved a few oil changes, and basically nothing on the electric side of the car has gone wrong. It's all been just mechanical stuff because the car does now have 100,000 miles on it. So that's my personal history, and to give you a bit of a background, I just thought I'd give you that. So our story starts really in the modern age. I mean, of course, electric cars were around 100 years ago. But for today, the modern age started in 1990 when the California Air Resources Board, which was formed basically to deal with the problem of smog and poor air quality. That was a major problem in Los Angeles in the late 80s, and California Air Resources Board has been a leader in legislation for emissions. In 1990, they came out with what was later known to be LEV1, the Low Emissions Vehicle Standards. But an important small section of that LEV was the zero emission mandate. And the zero emission mandate was basically, the thinking behind it was, well, if you're going to get a new technology on board, such as zero emission vehicles, you need to have a market for it. So it mandated that in 1998, 2% of all cars sold by what was called large volume manufacturers had to be zero emissions. And the way they defined it was that it essentially had to be an electric car because couldn't have any evaporative fuels, and it had to be emissions free. So 2% by 1998, 5% by 2001, and 10% of vehicles sold in the state of California by 2003 would have to be zero emission. Or alternatively, the car companies could pay a $5,000 fee for every part of the quota they didn't meet. And for medium manufacturers, they were exempt until 2003, and small manufacturers could earn their credits. I mean, they were all subject to the average fleet emissions of the LEV standards that were set out in 1990. So the cars companies that were affected by this were GM, Ford, Toyota, Honda, Chrysler, and Nissan. Mazda originally was there, but dropped into the medium volume manufacturer, as it turned out. Now, two really key cars that came out of this era were the legendary EV1, made by Saturn's division in GM. And this was really a fabulous car. A friend of mine in 1998 arrived at LAX and rented one of these cars from Budget Rent-A-Car, and he basically just, he looked at this car. He was an electrical engineer. He pushed the button to start the car. The whole dash lit up. It was all digital readout. It had performance. He just pushed on the accelerator, and it just responded. He said, "This is a must-have car. Like, this is just such a fantastic car." It absolutely was one of the best cars that GM has ever made. It has the lowest coefficient of drag. It was 0.19. The second best car that GM has ever made for coefficient of drag happens to be the Chevy Volt, by the way. Other manufacturers also made some cars. The other one that made a stir was the Toyota RAV4 EV. They made about 1,500 of them, and according to Wikipedia, 500 are still on the road today. There was 2 of them in Vancouver in recent years. One of them actually got damaged in a parking lot while it was parked and had to be written off, unfortunately. And I've driven these cars, and they have 100 miles range, basically the same as a commercial range of vehicles today. So, who killed the electric car? Chris Payne's documentary of 2006 really brought this to the attention of a lot of people. Who killed the electric car? There's a lot of conspiracy theories. Basically, I really attribute it to the fact that business models like to have products that break down and become obsolete very quickly. Oil companies obviously like to sell oil, and there's a lot, and those are very influential business groups. But Chris Payne's documentary sort of got this into the public consciousness. But then after 2003, when the program was basically killed by CARB itself, the directors of CARB at the time basically said that the hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is the solution to all our needs, and basically we don't need the electric car. Well, electric cars didn't go away, and Chris Payne again made another documentary in 2011 documenting the comeback of the electric car. He focused on Tesla and some EV conversion people, and also Nissan, as well as General Motors and the Volt, Bob Lutz and company. And basically, at this point in time, this is starting in about 2007, same time I started building my car, or at least purchased it, we had a number of upstarts. And in the automobile industry, there's a lot of upstarts that have never failed, never succeeded. And you think of Tupper back in the early 1950s. You think of Bricklin. You think of DeLorean. All these guys had big, ideas of building a car company, and it is a very tough thing to do. However, Tesla, and I'll tell you a little bit about it more in the future, and just coming up in a couple slides, but they were really the ones that sort of broke the ice and I think got people moving. Fisker, with their Karma, this incredibly sleek and sexy car, 5,600 pounds though, very, very heavy. It's a hybrid electric. And Fisker got started, 2008 or so. They actually engaged a company here in Vancouver called Advanced Lithium Power that basically the business relationship didn't end well, and Advanced Lithium Power went out of business. They were going to supply batteries to Fisker. It was actually A123 that ended up providing batteries for Fisker, and actually A123 filed for bankruptcy in October of last year, which was a severe blow to Fisker. Not only that, global warming, climate change, Hurricane Sandy on October 29th of 2012, Hurricane Sandy swamped a lot storing 338 Fisker Karmas and flooded them all with seawater. Fisker filed a claim to the insurance company for $33 million. Each one of these cars is worth about $100,000 a piece. And the insurance company balked and said, nope, these cars were in transit and the policy doesn't cover that. Fisker is having a very tough time. So whether they will be able to continue remains to be seen at this point. Coda is another one based in California. They're using basically a Chinese auto body and completing the electrical components here in California. And they're running along, not as well funded. Remains to be seen whether they will become prominent or not. Another one out of Atlanta, Georgia, Wego, is also taking, this is sort of the first two-seater car built in America, competing against the Smart car for sure. Again, Chinese body assembled with the components, electrical components in Atlanta, Georgia. Amp Motors, another company that is providing electric vehicles through converting other auto-produced large automobile companies. This is the Jeep Cherokee. They also do a Mercedes version. VIA Motors, another very interesting company. Now Bob Lutz is a director of this company. VIA Motors originally was providing consulting to GM and back in the mid-aughts, and essentially was, I think, their strategy of a serial hybrid, which was actually used by GM for the Chevy Volt. Now, what VIA Motors does is they take a standard GMC truck, they take out the transmission from the engine, attach a generator to that, a 150 amp generator, then they attach a 300 amp motor, or sorry, I'm talking kilowatts here, 150 kilowatt generator and a 300 kilowatt motor to the drive shaft, and then they throw batteries in. They also have inverters on board. This is a total work truck. You can plug in your arc welder and any kind of equipment, and it runs on gas and also plug in for recharging the batteries as well. So a hybrid electric that's a real work truck. So with all these upstarts, the automakers jumped in. GM had their Volt. Nissan has gone ahead big time. Carlos Ghosn has made a huge commitment into electric cars through Renault, as also Nissan with their Leaf. The Nissan Leaf is, I think, now well over 40,000 cars produced and sold around the world. In North America, in the USA last year, their sales were a bit disappointing. They only had 10,000 sales for the entire year, as opposed to, I think, about 24,000 for the Chevy Volt. But half of those sales, 5,000 cars, were sold in the last 3 months of the year. Mitsubishi's been a big player with the iMEV. I haven't got a picture of it. BMW also jumped in 2009 and released 1,000 test Mini E's, which were fully electric. They did the same thing as the GM EV1, where they leased them to customers and then took them all back. But they've progressed. BMW's progressed with various concept cars. Their i3 is scheduled to be delivered. First i3s will be delivered in Vancouver later this fall, I believe. And they also have their i8 concept car, which is a super high-end sports car. Daimler has made electric smarts, and these ones have proliferated through, maybe you know, through Car2Go as well. Ford, a little bit of a laggard, but at the Consumer Electronics Show last January 2012 that was, they announced the Ford Focus EV. Very few of these have been sold. Whether they're really pushing this or not, locally I understand that many of the dealerships aren't picking these up. A bit slow on Ford's part here. And Chrysler Fiat, this one I think will be an incredible winner. The Fiat 500 has been a huge seller for Chrysler, and the reviews, the early reviews on the EV version have been absolutely fabulous. I think this is going to be a very hot car coming up when it arrives in Vancouver in the next year or so. We also have some automakers or electric vehicle makers in BC, and I wanted just to point out a few of these because we have some great innovation right here in BC. Smoothwake is making electric tractors and also some electric boat things and products. And these are really, I mean, if you look at the cost, the benefits of having electric vehicles are the low operating costs and the reliability. And really, farmers feel the pinch as anybody else does. And the owner of Smoothwake, Steve Davis, feels that there's a great opportunity here. He's starting to sell these electric tractors locally and around California and Ontario so far. Another version that he's working on is this model here, which is more of a lawn care and a small bucket. He also is working on electric boats as well, and he's already got a couple of prototypes going on this 26-foot boat, which I believe is another major market for electric technology. Here's another one out of Kelowna, Vaughan Mine here. Two brothers have made this recreational vehicle. Really, it's an electric dune buggy called the Chico. It's got it's a 48-volt system, so it's pretty powerful, and as a recreational vehicle, really quite interesting. They've done a fabulous finishing job. The granddaddy of electric vehicles, though, in BC is Randy Holmquist. He's been operating his company on Vancouver Island since the early 90s. Definitely the most experienced auto producer here for making electric vehicles. He does a Ranger conversion, as you see in this picture, and he also converts larger vehicles, these Isuzus. He's had clients that they ship these in from the UK. He updates them, converts them to electric, and sends them out back to their customers. He's done a number of airplane handling equipment and tugs, small little hand tugs for towing carts around. And he also has this this is a low-speed vehicle. It's been used around Vancouver and sold around quite extensively. He was telling me he just sold 3 trucks last month. So there's some good little business happening here in BC, even though we're not in the Golden Horseshoe and part of the main automotive industry. I wanted to talk a bit about Tesla because they really are redefining the auto industry, and they are definitely the leaders in this new electric vehicle race. They have picked up a lot of influential early adopters and people who have been buying their cars. I was at an event last Wednesday, 2 weeks ago, where a venture capitalist was talking about energy tech, the new name apparently for clean tech, and he was mentioning how he's at this dinner the night before where he was talking to 3 other venture capitalists here in town, and they were all talking about their Tesla S sedans. There's about 50 of them in Vancouver at this point. 37 were delivered before the new year, and another 24, a couple dozen have been delivered in the last little while. Tesla has aligned themselves with some very powerful partners. Toyota, they supply Toyota with their electric motors and drive systems for the new Toyota RAV4 EV that's now currently being sold in California. They have investments from Toyota, investments from Panasonic, investments from Daimler. So they have some they've aligned themselves quite well with some strategic people. Their design for building cars is actually very revolutionary. It's been around for a long time, but they're really the first ones to really use a skateboard design, essentially a platform where you pop on different bodies and you can adjust your batteries and motors as you need to suit the model of car you're building. Very quickly to develop new models, and hence the picture of the X sedan that I showed you in that first picture a few slides ago. Highly automated production line, as you can see here, robots. They've got a corporate distribution network. What they are doing is not going through a dealership network. They are selling their cars directly through corporate stores. In Vancouver here, they have a service center on Powell Street where they've been prepping the cars for delivery to customers, but they are also planning sometime later this year, I understand, a showcase storefront in Pacific Center Mall, and essentially a car dealership in an auto mall, in a mall, not an auto mall, but an actual mall, because with electric technology, of course, there's no oil, there's no fumes. Their other radical thing they're doing is they're basically providing you for cross-country travel free electricity through a number of superstations, and I'll talk more about this later. But 100 solar-powered charging stations. They have solar power on the roof, so it's a little bit of an offset to the energy that's provided through the stations. And basically, they're planning 200 over the entire North American populated areas, and you'll be able to drive anywhere in North America on their dime, on their electricity. So the electric car, the real thing about the electric car is the driving experience. It's Tesla with their Roadster, their original car that they produced, which was a conversion. They basically set the bar very high, and the bar was basically outperform internal combustion engines in every way, and essentially they did that. It's faster, it accelerates faster, it has doesn't have the same range, but they had range of 250 miles, and which is nothing to sniff at, and well beyond what most people need. The other thing, this is a picture, unfortunately, from a UK car, so it's right-hand drive, but this is from inside a Roadster, Tesla Roadster compartment. You can see on the console there's a center console with a graph. I wanted to show you this. I've had a number of rides in Tesla Roadsters, and they have this little screen in the middle of the console, and it gives you the torque, the horsepower, and the G-force. And you can set it to, you can see the button there to push peak, and it'll give you the peak of all these three readings over the last drive that you've made in the last few minutes. And to experience 0.65 G acceleration is really something that I have never experienced before in a land vehicle. Other than, I think, parachuting is the only way you can get a higher G-force of about 1. So it's really quite an impressive car. Nissan Leaf, the other thing about electric cars is they are so easy to be integrated with your smartphone. So the Leaf has a system called CarWings that allows you to program your charge, find out the condition of your car, and do a number of other things. You can turn on climate control before you get in the car. So if it's a cold morning and you have your car set at your comfortable temperature, you can turn it on before you even get to the car to unplug it. So you're actually getting your car climate controlled on mains electricity before you leave for your day's driving. Got a bit of ahead of myself there. There we go. Okay, energy efficiency. So I sort of think of any child about 9 years old can be an energy expert if they know this one fact. If the energy that goes into a vehicle turns the torque of the wheel, that's good. If it's not used and it comes off as heat, which doesn't turn wheels, it's bad. And if you look at basically these well-to-wheel analyses, I've graphically explained them here. So the inefficiencies in red are basically heat losses. The yellow sections are the losses in getting oil from the ground and to your pump so you can pump it. Similarly with electricity, it's the amount of losses to create, to distribute electricity. But if you look at, it's very clear here, gasoline is only 25% efficient in turning wheels and actually getting what you want to get done. Diesel is a little bit better. Hydrogen fuel cells are only 50% efficient, have other issues. Battery electrics are 80% efficient. Grid tie are even better, and the only difference there is you lose about 10% just through a battery. So let's compare some energy equivalents, sort of apples to apples. So if you take a gallon of gasoline, it's about the energy required, energy contained in it is about 44 kilowatt hours. But the energy to make that gallon of gasoline is an additional 8 to 12 kilowatt hours. So if you want to drive 125 miles, which is what a gallon will give you on an average ICE car, you're using about 52 kilowatt hours of energy. So what's the equivalent if you have an electric car? Well, the equivalent is actually, for 25 miles, it's about 8 kilowatts. Essentially, the amount of energy to make a gallon of gasoline is all you need to actually drive the same distance in an electric car. So one of the biggest things about electric cars is they use a lot less energy from the beginning. Greenhouse gas reduction. There's often people say, well, you know, you have an electric car, all you're doing is moving emissions from tailpipes to the coal plants that produce the electricity. So what these circles represent is the relative amount of CO2 per kilometer of driving. The outer sphere here is a gasoline engine. Diesel is a little bit better, and this is what a Toyota Prius, a gas-electric hybrid, would look like. And I took these numbers right off. The Prius is what I use for the gas-electric hybrid. So let's compare this to what the emissions would be, first of all, in the U.S. If you're an all-electric. So if you're using an electric car and you're driving that same kilometer, and you're on the U.S. electric grid back 12, 13 years ago, that's what your footprint would be. It's better than a gas-electric hybrid. Now, the stats for the U.S. grid come out every 3 years or so, and through eGrid, and what's happening is the grid is getting greener. The latest results in 2012 actually show another significant decrease in carbon intensity, because in the last year there has been no coal plants produced, and there's been a huge switch to natural gas because natural gas is so cheap. So the U.S. grid is greening even more. Now, even if you're on one of the dirtiest grids around, which happens to be next door, but it could also be Montana, or it could be Colorado, or it could be Bali, which basically, you know, relies all on coal and fossil fuels. Your imprint is still better than a gas-electric hybrid. But we're in BC. There's where we are in BC. 10 grams per kilowatt hour, and that's right out of the most recent BC Hydro Annual Report. It's sometimes, I noticed in 2011 it was actually 21 grams per kilowatt hour of energy, but we're in BC, it makes so much sense to be driving electric cars. The economic value of EVs, I'll check the time here, okay. They're expensive right now to buy, but is that really the true cost of ownership? And what will happen to prices when in the future? Yes, they are expensive right now. There's limited production. There's very immature supply chains. The cost of getting all these parts and ordering them is still very high. But once you get, you know, after 100 years of production of ICE cars, they become very cheap, and even though a very complex machine. So let's compare what happened to other popular products of the last 20 years, 30 years. In 1983, you could buy a PC for $10,000. Or how about a cell phone? 1987, $3,000. How about an iPod? Well, 2001, they cost $600. The ironic thing today is in 2013, you can still buy an iPhone for about $600, but it does everything. Another big thing that you have to worry about is what's the relationship between change in prices of gas versus electricity? If you look at the last 22 years, this is a recent graph that came out from Rocky Mountain Institute. You can see that in the last 22 years, the price of gasoline measured in dollars per gallon has increased 250%, where regulated electricity has gone up only 50%. In Canada, these are similar. So really, when it comes to economic value for electric vehicles, there's differences in the cost of ownership between ICE and electric. And fuel and energy is the one that stands out the most. Like I said, my car, I spend $30 a month in electricity, as opposed to paying $300 a month for gasoline. So $270 a month that I'm saving every month is more money in my pocket. Electric cars. This is the business problem that the auto industry has with electric cars. They don't wear out. Brakes don't wear out because you're not using them. You're using regenerative braking to slow the car. Our 2005 Prius has almost 100,000 kilometers on it. Last time I was in for a check, they told me 75% of the brake life is still there. We've never done anything with the brakes in 100,000 kilometers, and that's with the Prius. Engines, of course, are very complicated. and exhaust systems, catalytic converters, very expensive things. There isn't any equivalent to that really in electric cars. Depreciation. Now, why have I shown you a 100-year-old car that drives daily? In fact, is going to be driven tonight. It's because electric vehicles, without all this building mechanical liability, will last a very long time. I expect them practically to last 3 to 5 times that of normal internal combustion engine cars, save for being in accidents and being written off. But even the batteries are lasting a long time. The batteries in this Detroit, actually, they were a special nickel steel chemistry. They lasted until 1990, long, basically 75 years before they had to be replaced. Modern electric cars and modern batteries, I'm not saying they're going to last 75 years, but they're going to last 15 to 20 years, and prices are coming down. So another way to look at economic value then is the cumulative cost over time. And what I've done here is put a comparison between a $20,000 a hypothetical $20,000 gas car, a $25,000 hybrid, and a $30,000 EV as purchase prices. So I've just taken, this is a totally unscientific study that I've just based on my own personal ownership of ICE cars, of hybrids, and my guess on electric vehicles, because honestly, I've only owned an electric vehicle for a year, and nobody's really owned a modern electric vehicle for more than maybe a year and a half on the outside. So it is conjecture, but we know what the costs are. And if you track the cumulative costs as you go over time, you end up after 10 years, essentially, and I'll just turn on this little device here. Here you've got about close to $60,000 in total cost of your $20,000 gas car. The hybrid is now at about 40, and the electric car has a very shallow slope, hardly anything. As after 10 years, you're really up about $35,000, $5,000 in operating costs over 10 years. Now, what happens if you sell that car? And so there we go. So I'm assuming that in a 10-year-old car, there's not much gain. It's virtually valueless. And a hybrid's going to have more life expectancy. You're going to get a bit of a drop because of the resale value. An electric car, if it's only 1/3 of its way through a 30-year lifespan, and you discount for maybe the batteries are only 80% state of charge or 80% capacity of the original capacity, this is the difference. It's huge. So what is the cost of ownership over ICE? Well, in summary terms, I like to say, I'm going to get rid of this. There we go. 1/6 of the energy, and I'm going to turn off this drawing tool because it seems to be. Oh, sorry. 1/6 the energy.
You just hit page forward, John.
Yeah, okay, I'm here. So 1/6 the energy, 1/6 the maintenance, 1/3 the depreciation, essentially 60% less cost. But in BC, it's actually not 1/6, it's actually 1/10. And the reason for that is we have some of the lowest electricity prices in the world and some of the highest gas costs. So this drawing tool has got me sidelined here. Okay, let's continue on. Charging and infrastructure. This is the important thing about electric cars. It's sort of the chicken and egg issue. So 90% of your charging is going to happen at home. Bruce, I'm having some issues with this pen. It seems to have stopped.
Maybe try just hitting page forward. Just click in the window and hit page down, and that may get you hitting the slides forward.
Yeah, I seem to have lost control here.
Oh my.
Okay, well, there's the. Okay, let's go with this. So 90% of your charging is going to happen at home. That's where you live. You sleep 8 hours a night. You're there most of the time. Remember, cars generally are parked 92% of the time. Where are they parked the most? Home is where you start your day every day. At work, if you're going to a regular place every day at work, 10% is probably what you're going to use. That's my experience. And when I go to work, and I typically work an 8-hour day, unfortunately, I can plug into 110 and I drive 20 kilometers to work. Well, I'm charged up on 110 in basically 4 hours. The only time I really need charging is when I travel, but I don't travel very often. Typically on the go is about 1%. And there where you want to charge is like hotels, restaurants, tourist attractions, somewhere where you're spending some time. So let's review the receptacles and plugs here. First of all, this is a bit of an education here. We have 3 levels of charging. The first one is, come on. Gee, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this.
It's showing off on level 1 and level 2 are showing up on my screen.
Yeah, and I've got some pictures to go along with these, but it's just not moving forward.
You need to click in your window, your PowerPoint window.
Go forward to the next window and go back to this one. Maybe that'll do it. Bypass
maybe we
the drawing device.
Have a couple of questions while you're working this out.
Yeah.
Actually, Guy, there's one question here for you, and it's what is the status of the electric car, the BC Provincial Electric Vehicle Rebate Program, and what is BCSCA doing about it?
I wish I had clear information on that. There's the $5,000, I mean, sure someone else can put their hand up on this one. The $5,000 grant incentive, I believe, officially expires on March 31st, but the people at Smart Cars told me that if you put your name down for a car, even if you're not buying it, they'll reserve the $5,000 incentive until you're ready to buy the car. Now, how many months ahead that goes, I don't know, but that may not be a fully accurate answer.
I don't think it is, actually.
Yeah.
But,
Peter Ostergaard's on the call, and Peter may know. Is Peter on the call, and could you put him on live? He may have a better answer to that one.
Okay, well, I'm back to mine. I've now got control.
Well, you go ahead, John, for now.
So I'll just continue. So level 1 is your...
We're probably going to be 10 minutes after 1 o'clock for finishing because we're running a bit late.
Okay, I'm going to move forward then fairly quickly here. Basically, level 1 and level 2 can be charged through these new J1772 chargers. This is a picture of a Nissan Leaf. There's your J1772 receptacle, and this other one here is called a DC fast charge. It's actually connecting directly to your battery, bypassing your charger. It's called CHAdeMO, which is a Japanese standard. That's the level 3 fast charge. It actually goes directly, it's DC voltage, very sophisticated power electronics, expensive, and you need a fairly large electrical supply in order to serve this. There's another standard that's coming shortly. It still remains when it's going to be put into production, but this combo basically combines both level 2 and level 3, all 3 levels, into one outlet. Still, when that's going to be coming along, I really can't say. Residential charging is, I'd like to just talk briefly about this. I was in Uptown yesterday, which is Concord Pacific's newest development at 12th and Kingsway, and what they are required by the City of Vancouver for 20% of all their stalls to be fully wired, ready to go. Now these are so-called NEMA 1450. They're basically stove outlets attached to every stall. There's 20% of the stalls in this building. They're all wired and ready to go. You just have to plug in your J1772 charger that you can get from your supplier. And I don't know how they're going to deal with mounting them on the walls and security and such, but the power is there, and that gives you your level 2 charging ability right from your home. But this is a big problem for residentials because essentially for existing MURBs, these are new ones in Vancouver and not for other MURBs outside of Vancouver. For existing MURBs, you have to get consensus on cost to be able to do this. It's expensive to pull in more power, and there may be issues with having enough power in the building. Another area is secondary suites. People that live in suites in houses throughout the city are usually relying on street parking. They have no access to close to receptacles, and this is a real problem. Single-family homes are probably the easiest to obtain power because you have total control over your own property, but actually getting 220 to the garage might be an expensive affair. It could be, a couple $1,000s if you have to run a new line. to the garage. I wanted to point out this installation in Houston, Texas. 54 charge stations in a single location, happens to be the city of Houston. And this is currently the largest multi-charger level 2 public charging installation in North America. So average daily driving, I wanted to say quickly that 50 kilometers per day is what the North American average is, about $1. At level 1, that's 10 hours to charge. At level 2, that's 3 hours to charge with the current 3.3 kilowatt chargers. We're going to go to 6.6 kilowatt chargers very quickly. Nissan Leafs have them in the 2013 year, and that means that a full charge, or a charge to go with your average daily driving will be 1.5 hours. In a fast charge, less than 6 minutes. That's what the average is between Canada and the U.S. Doesn't really matter. It's the same distance statistically. Cross-country travel. This is the picture from ChargePoint last night, what the level 2 charge network looks like across North America. I wanted to touch on what Tesla is doing there with their supercharger network. They currently have 6 stations in California, and you can see by the outer rings what that range provides you with. This is their free high-speed fast charge stations that they have. Their plan for North America is to have this, the 200 stations, and they basically cover all the populated areas in North America. And that'll be free long-distance driving. In BC, in January, our BC government announced 11 fast charge networks. They originally promised 30, but they've promised 11. They're actually going to deliver 11, and these are the locations that they're going to go into. So we'll have a basic high charge, fast charge network in BC by the end of this month. Now, the initiatives, we talked about them quickly. There's still about $4.5 million of the $5,000 rebates left for new cars. The government has said they're going to cancel all these programs March 31st. It wasn't addressed in the budget. The people who are in the know are telling me that it's all in the hands of Treasury Board, which is essentially the senior inner cabinet of the Liberal government, and they are looking just to pull back this money to put into revenues to offset other costs in government at this point in time. We being Viva has lobbied the government to not do this, to not dismantle these programs. We are right in the middle of this starting to take off, and it would be just crazy to stop it now, since they've already set the money aside. I'm not going to spend too much time in the City of Vancouver, only to say that it really is one of the leading jurisdictions, and having the 20% of all parking stalls in MURBs and 100% of the back room available is an important thing. But we've got a long way to go yet in serving residential charging infrastructure, which is 90% of where people are going to charge. So, getting us to the tipping point, some metrics. We have 2.8 million cars in BC. Currently, the EV count is around 400. In near term, with the CCIF fund, which is wrapping up on March 31st, 562 level 2 chargers, 30 fast chargers promised all the way, but only 11 actually been announced. And there's a program that's been sort of last minute thrown together for MURBs for another couple hundred. We might have close to 1,000 between that and other businesses. In BC, we are the highest percentage of hybrid owners in Canada, more than double the rest of Canada's take-up on hybrids. We have lots of experience with that, and I think that bodes well for people picking up electric cars. Norway is interesting. They're probably the world leader in the pickup of cars right now. They've got fairly big incentives for buying electric cars, and that's greasing the wheels there. 3% of all car sales right now are currently EVs. That is outstanding. Everybody else is in the decimal points of less than 1%. So I would consider about 10 to 15% would be a tipping point when we get to BC. And I did a quick calculation a few weeks ago. If 15% of our 2.8 million cars were EVs, I calculated that the net trade benefit, the trade surplus change in our our trade with other jurisdictions would be to the benefit of about $1.2 billion. And that's simply through the savings of not having to buy refined automotive fuels from other markets that because we don't produce them here in BC, but essentially transferring that money rather than going out of the province to just buying it all in-house from BC Hydro. $1.2 billion a year if we had 15% electric vehicles. So I just want to go through quickly some of the businesses that are actually using electric vehicles. Concord was the first in 2009 with their Cosmo on West Georgia, and they have their building up and running. They also put electric charging into the bicycle rooms. Bosa, another major developer here in Vancouver, has launched a program called BosaVolt. They're building a large building here in Falls Creek, right just down the street from Science World. Edible Canada, Eric Pateman actually gave a speech last Monday, last Wednesday at the Metro Vancouver Infrastructure Forum. He basically said that the cost of his EV charging installation on Granville Island was paid for essentially with the launch party of the Chevy Volt that he hosted about a year ago. This company, Kicking Horse Coffee in Invermere, BC, one of the last valleys before you reach Alberta, they installed this just earlier last week, and they also have solar thermal and solar PV on their roof, but they also have a little cafe, so this is another marketing thing that they can use. We've mentioned we have the chap from Royal Bakery here listening in today. That's great. They are another leader with Leaf cars and charging at their bakery that you can find on PlugShare. The hotels here, a natural for EV charging because when you go somewhere and you're going to sleep overnight, you've got lots of time to recharge. Many of the hotels here, Best Western, their Kelowna hotel bought chargers before the program for CCIF really was in place. Best Western, their national buyer, had assisted with having 10 of their other hotels, 10 of 65 here in BC, register for CCIF, and they plan to install. Retail stores, malls, shopping malls. Viva members were out at Brentwood Town Center last Saturday promoting electric cars and had their electric cars there. About 5 electric cars showed up that day. That's Shape Properties, who've got charging stations at Lougheed Town Center, Jericho, High Street. They've also applied for them on the island and other places around BC. So some important trends. I think that consumer value is more important than ever, and in opposition to public sentiment that electric cars are expensive, they're not. They are actually much cheaper. The cost of ownership is cheaper, and I think this is what's going to, if you get that message out to the public, people are going to turn on to electric cars for the economic value and just for the driving experience. But also there's a lot more interest in climate change. That seems to be really coming now. We're seeing some horrible events happen on a very frequent basis, and I think this is one of the solutions that has to happen, and people are thinking about it. There's a declining interest in demand for car ownership. In 1978, 60% of 16-year-olds had driver's license. In 2009, only 30% of 16-year-olds have driver's licenses. Many people under the age of 40 are now thinking, if I'm living in the city with car-to-goes and motos, I don't need a car. Why would I have all the hassles of having one? So the rise of car sharing is another big trend I think that's happening, and electric cars and car sharing I think are a fabulous combination. And here's one in Paris. I was in Paris over Christmas holidays, and this one is particularly interesting. In Paris, they have 600 car spots throughout central Paris in the first 7 arrondissements, and they're in clusters of 4 to 6 cars. Each cluster has a kiosk. Each parking stall has a cord, and you can rent these cars and drive them around. They're virtually in every neighborhood. You see them on the road all the time. And the only thing I didn't like about Paris was the smell of diesel on the street. But electric cars are, and this is what, go back to the California Air Resources Board. Their mandate in the beginning was to improve our air quality. I mean, the rise of all the respiratory diseases and things has been phenomenal, and we need to do something about it. So how will we reach the tipping point? Well, I think in BC we're already a leading consumer of hybrid technology, and this is boding well for EVs in BC. We must build the infrastructure. We need to legislate building codes and bylaws. We have to support residential. I think we've got a fabulous start with the Community Charging Infrastructure Fund. We need to support businesses that adopt EVs and charging infrastructures. I think a lot of businesses already see the value of courting customers, automotive customers that are saving $250 or more a month on gasoline. That means they have $250 more a month to spend. I think people need to know more about the benefits of EVs, and that is happening. You know, take a friend for a drive in one. Spread the word. That's what's going to bring us to the tipping point. Also, I think the auto industry, whether they like it or not, is going to be shrinking. Now, it's not going to be shrinking perhaps in India and China, but definitely in established markets, there's less demand for automobiles. People don't really want the hassles of owning them, and they certainly don't want the costs. Finally, I just wanted to say a number of other organizations that you can participate in. Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association, the Victoria Nissan Leaf Club is very active in doing drives and rallies, and I like their saying, the car that pays you in savings every month. There's a few others here I've listed here, and I'm sorry for going over time. There you go.
Phew, John, I feel like I've come off a electric car rally. So I'm going to make a unilateral. We'll carry on till 1:15. Apologies to those who need to go off and join their next work seminar or whatever. But we got 15 minutes for questions because there's so much great material you packed in there, John. So Bruce, if you want to switch over to the Q&A images, and let's see who we've got lined up for questions.
Sure. One of the first questions is, what do you think about battery life, John?
Can you say who the questioner is as well?
I don't have that noted for this first one.
Battery life, big question.
Sure.
Yeah, how long will it keep that 80% that you need to keeping a usable vehicle?
Well, it all depends on a number of things, but essentially that 80% of original capacity is the industry standard for saying that's when your battery is old and you should get it replaced. But that doesn't mean that you need to actually replace it. I mean, if your daily driving is 50, let's say it's an average of 50 kilometers a day, and I have a car that starts out with 150 kilometers range and it goes to 80%. What's that? 120 kilometers a day. Well, so 15 years later, my car is only good for 120 kilometers, but I only drive 50 kilometers a day. Is that going to incent me to change the battery? Probably not. As far as longevity goes, the Priuses, the Toyota Priuses, and actually the EV1 started with nickel metal hydride batteries. Back in 1999, they started putting in nickel metal hydrides, and also Prius had the same technology at the same time. I don't know of any major failures of those batteries since that time. Our 2005 Prius is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with the battery. We had to replace the lead-acid battery after 6 years, but that's the expected lifetimes of that chemistry. Lithium ions are much more durable. I believe that you're going to see 15 to 20-year life expectancies sort of as the low end. My own batteries, which are not very sophisticated on my conversion, are now 3 years old, but they've only been in use for a year. And so far they're delivering to spec. So it's about how you treat them. You can damage batteries. You can brick them, as people say, if you discharge them too much, or you keep them too fully charged for too long a time. That also degrades their ability. You keep them in the middle of their charge range, and they love it. You can go, you can cycle thousands of times.
So for people, the images, don't ask any questions about the images that are thrown up. They're just random pictures of electric vehicles I put up to give us visual stimulation while we're doing the Q&A. Bruce, next question.
Jesse Hovert from Williams Lake is asking, how does cold affect battery, I guess, both life and performance?
Yeah, when it's minus 20, minus 30.
Badly. Cold batteries don't give as much power, and their energy is reduced. the solution there, what the automakers do is they basically have temperature control in the battery packs. So they basically heat them up. And I had a question once. I was speaking in Edmonton, Alberta, and somebody said, well, how does an electric car work at minus 40? And I said to the person, well, how does your internal combustion engine car work at minus 40? Well, I plug it into a block heater. Well, that's it.
Next question.
Sure. Here's one about how if we had 20% electric cars in British Columbia, or no, it's from Lawrence Eddy. If we had 10 or 15% EV usage, would BC Hydro's infrastructure be able to carry that much power?
I've heard stats from BC Hydro that if all the 2.8 million cars were produced, were converted to electric, that the additional energy increase would be 18%. That's in energy. The concern of hydro is that everybody charges at the same time. They're always managing peak loads, and that's the issue for hydro. It's not really the amount. I always like to throw back to hydro, and nobody's ever given me a good answer for this. Our peaks are totally different than the rest of the world. Most peaks happen afternoons on sunny days, in summer days. In BC, our peaks are from November to March, and they occur at 7 a.m. in the morning, and they occur at 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at night. And that's mainly because of the amount of, I think, baseboard heating is a huge proportion of our loads. If we get rid of baseboard heating, I think we could manage the heating loads, the peak periods, quite a bit. The energy, I think, is a less of an issue, but it's going to take so much time to get to, well, Site C is going to produce another 10% of what we generate already. I was looking at BC Hydro's generation reports over the annual reports over the last few years, and we've actually declined in energy production.
Now, John, to jump in there, because some of us don't want Site C to happen necessarily, but the 18% increased load is only half of what could be saved through energy efficiency conservation measures. So any householder could save that 18% by making their own home more efficient, and with newer, more efficient appliances and stuff like that.
Yeah, what's interesting is BC Hydro is forecasting a large increase in electrical demand after it's been dropping for the last few years.
It's the liquefied natural gas game that's going on. Let's not go there for now. Let's stay with electric cars.
That's what I figure. Next question.
Sure. Here's similar questions from Kip Drobish and Josh Usher. How will states and provinces fund major transportation projects if those are currently funded with taxes on motor fuels? If we had everyone driving electric cars and weren't using gasoline, where would that tax money come from?
Road taxes is my take on this.
Well, it's happening with tolling, I think.
That's right.
It's already started, and that's probably going to continue. I can see tolling as a much more equitable way of collecting taxes and revenues from people who use the system. So that's how I think it'll happen. In Washington State, they charge a annual renewal fee for electric vehicles to offset the loss of revenue taxes. So there's lots of different mechanisms. I don't think that's rocket science to figure out. But the benefits, I mean, if you look at the benefits of electric vehicles, I've already stated the benefits to our trade surplus by not having to buy all this fuel that we have to buy from outside jurisdictions. There's benefits, not to mention health cost reduction if we had cleaner air in our cities.
Yeah. Next question, Bruce.
Here's more just a comment, I guess, from David Grove. My Royal Bay Bakery, my photovoltaics on his roof generated 100% of my annual car use electricity requirement this past 12 months. Would this not be a good place for incentives?
Well, absolutely. My car takes about less than 3 kilowatt hours a day, and a fairly small system can easily generate that. So, basically, I think we should be supporting photovoltaics for security reasons, for and actually reducing strain on the distribution system, because we, for some reason in BC, we have long-distance transmission lines that lose 15% of the energy just from getting it from Peace River down to the Lower Mainland. So by generating right in the place where we use the electricity, there's a lot of incentives there, and I don't think those have been reflected. And we should actually put those incentives, those savings, to encourage more people to have PV right in the load centers.
I guess we can mention that right now with the net metering program does pay almost 10 cents per kilowatt hour from BC Hydro for pretty much any photovoltaic installation.
Yeah, and also there's the Royal Bakery solution. I mean, in terms of increased electrical load, I mean, solar has it ready-made without any new dams needed. Next question.
Sure, here's one for Peter Grant. Why, since those nickel-iron batteries in that Detroit electric lasted 70 years, why aren't we still using those?
They're still available. Actually, another company has bought the name to it, called Edison Iron. You can still buy them. They're very expensive. They're commonly used for top of mountain telecom repeaters where they don't want to have to send a crew up for 20 years at a time. These batteries literally last 50 years, the commercial ones today. They're about 30% more energy dense than lead-acid batteries, but consider lithium-ion batteries are the chemistry for lithium-ion, they're all different. Lithium-ion, though, are 4 to 5 times the energy density of lead-acid. So lithium-ion has actually trumped nickel-steel as far as energy density, but longevity is huge with nickel-steel.
Yeah.
Here's one from Barry Shell, who's had an electric bike for 3 years, and it sounds like he's had a lot of problems with it. The battery's at 60%, so reducing the range. There's been a water problem in the motor. The throttle had to be replaced, and now there's a problem with the electronic control module. And so it's been an expensive experience to be riding an electric bicycle. How do we know that these electric cars are really reliable when they've really only been on the road for a year and a half?
Well, the cars are much more engineered. The bicycles, most of the bicycles out there are not very sophisticated. They don't necessarily have battery management systems. They're more subject to, the problems you can have in a bike. They get wet. They don't have a hermetically sealed shell around them, such as most automobiles, and at least designed for electric. And simply, it doesn't have this sophisticated engineering. All those problems that that Barry might have had with his EV bike can be solved, and they have been solved. I mean, basically, they're making underwater controlled vehicles that are all electric. They've been doing that for decades, and it's just a matter of applying the right engineering to the operating environment. So I don't think that's a representative sample of what modern electric vehicles will have.
If I can jump in there, a piece of advice I got from the Fairfield Bicycle Shop is when you're buying an electric bike, buy it with a variety that you've got a good supply of repairs and know-how for spare parts. If you get an imported Chinese bike and the company's suddenly not there a year later, you have a tough job getting replacement parts. Next question.
And then actually, I've calculated, my bicycle costs me more per kilometer to maintain than my car does by a long amount. I've kept track.
Right.
And also,
it's still pretty low.
Correction from Kip Drobish here that the net metering program only pays 10 cents if you generate more than you use, and I forgot to mention that.
Right.
That's right, because yeah, that's right.
One question here, what about delivery vans? You've shown a lot of the cars that you've shown. How much are these being used for urban delivery or even long distance? Actually,
I should have put that in because Canada Post has 6 Ford Transit Connect electrics downtown. Novex couriers have 2 larger, I think they're 3 or 5 ton trucks that they roll along the streets of Vancouver emissions free. There isn't as many. I think Coca-Cola has hybrid trucks for their deliveries. So it's starting to come. But what those larger vehicles and commercial vehicles need is more ready access to public charging, so that if they have a more extensive route, they can do that. Typically, fleets know where their cars go, and so like if you're City of Vancouver fleet, the city is 10 kilometers wide. Obviously, your range in a day is not that significant. But if you're a courier vehicle and you're serving the Lower Mainland, you need to have a larger range, so you need other opportunities to recharge. And that's one of the preventing more adoption of electric vehicles. But post office, they know the routes that they're going on. They know how much they drive, and they've been really happy with them. They went from 2 to 6 in the past year.
That's great. So it's coming up quarter past. How many more questions do you have lined up, Bruce?
I think we got a couple.
Okay.
A couple more here, but
Let's
I
do
think
just the 2 more then. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we put solar panels just on the roof of these trucks to make them more efficient?
Actually, at Frankfurt Airport, they do that. You see in Frankfurt Airport, they have solar panels on the roof of their utility trucks. Really isn't significant advantage for powering the actual traction pack of the car or the vehicle. It just simply isn't enough. Cars are too heavy. There's just not enough energy you can pull out of the sky through sun. But what it does do is it takes a bit of the load off through, and you always maintain that you have your 12-volt system, your low-voltage system, fully charged. And that's what you need for security, and basically the 12-volt system runs the brains of an electric car. So you want to always make sure the brains are well oxygenated.
I saw the data for someone who converted a plug-in hybrid Prius with the roof covered in solar, and it was delivering 10% of the energy needed. So it's that small percentage, right?
Here's just a comment from Bill Swan, thanking you for highlighting the Kicking Horse project in Invermere. And he wants to point out that the strength of cooperative approach to this project. The Groundswell Network Society partnered with Kicking Horse, and there's a great social currency when business and not-for-profits get together on these initiatives.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yes.
And Invermere, they've done great stuff with their solar greenhouse as well. If you're ever touring in Invermere, take a deco at that. So look, folks, it's 20 past, coming up 20 past. We should probably wind up now. This has been fantastic, John. Thanks very much. We will be sending an email. I've made a decision while doing all this. We'll send an email to everyone in BC with the details of who they can write to in the ministry, or which the local MLA or whatever. MLA is not much use now. It's election time. To get that pressure to hang on to the EV incentive program rather than disappear it into budget stuff, because we can all see the clear logic of the move towards the tipping point, and we can't afford to stop right now. And then if we get 100 letters going in, that's considerable pressure that gets noticed. So, John, any final comments?
No, I'm sorry it went over time. It's been fun. It's a little odd talking to my computer instead of to an audience, but it's been fun.
You're talking to well over 100 people around the province. It's not your computer. We're all listening to you, and we appreciate it very much. Thanks, everyone, for taking part in this. We'll have details of our next webinar coming up soon, and have a great afternoon. By the way, 24 of you already own an electric vehicle, of those on the line, and 14 were planning to get one within a year.
Hi, this is Michael Bream with EV West, and today we got a quick tip for you. We get a lot of inquiries from our customers asking little questions on how to make the installation easier, so we're going to start a little series and share some tips with you. Today we want to talk about twisted pair or twisted pair wiring. This is a technique that, believe it or not, was discovered by Alexander Graham Bell like way back in the day. And he discovered that you can cancel out electromagnetic interference by twisting two pairs of wire together. And we use this type of wiring for measuring the current across the shunt in our stated charge meters. So what I want to do today is just show you a really quick method of creating twisted pair wire for yourself. And this is the type of stuff that you see. You even find it as factory wiring in vehicles. And walk a little closer so you can see it. It's nice braided wire. It gives you a real nice. If you're installing our Link Pro or Xantrax, anything connected to a shunt, we recommend this type of wiring be used on all shunt applications. So what we do is we just measure out the course of the wire that we need. We add about 20–25% to that length because when you twist the wire, it's going to shorten it up. So you're going to go ahead, cut two pairs of wire. We use 18 gauge wire on most of this stuff, and just go ahead and cut equal lengths. Take your two pieces and put them in a vise. I'm just going to use our mill vise because it's right here and it's nice and easy. So I'm just going to stick this in the end here and clamp it down. I'm going to stretch this out. And I'm just going to use a cordless drill. You could use a corded one, either way. Get your two strips. And we're just going to put it in the chuck. I'm going to hold it with my hand and tighten it down. Now when I go ahead and tighten this, I want to put constant pressure on this. If I do it loose like this, it'll get all tangled up. We don't want that. So I'm going to pull back, put a little bit of constant pressure on it, and twist it up. Once it becomes nice and tight, I'm going to run it a little bit further and then back it off, all while maintaining pressure on the drill. And what that does is it kind of sets it so it doesn't want to unravel. I'm going to go a little bit further, pull back, put it in reverse, loosen it a little, and then undo the chuck. And there we have our twisted pair, and you're going to have a nice clean signal for your current sensor that comes off of your shunt. I hope that saves you a couple minutes in your installation. And for EV West, today's quick tip, this is Michael Bream, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.